Dr. Avery Sloan adjusted the collar of his ship suit as the shuttle gently docked with the alien vessel. The Odyssey's lights flickered behind him, a final reminder of his own ship's familiar warmth before stepping into the unknown. The Zerithian ship, suspended like a black pearl against the endless stars, had sent a distress signal a few hours earlier, but so far, no one from the alien crew had responded to hails. "This is still a terrible idea," murmured Lieutenant Carver, leaning against the shuttle's bulkhead. He was a broad-shouldered man with perpetually scruffy hair, as though he never quite left a bedhead state. His easygoing nature usually kept the crew's morale up, but today he seemed particularly tense. "We can't just leave them floating out here," Avery replied. "They're stranded. We have to help." The airlock hissed open, revealing the dim interior of the Zerithian ship. The corridor ahead was eerily quiet, lit only by faint, pulsating blue emergency lights. Avery stepped in cautiously, Carver right behind him. "If they try to eat us, I'm blaming you," Carver muttered. "Zerithians aren't known to be hostile," Avery said, scanning the corridor with his handheld device. "They're just different. Their culture values strength above all else. Don't show any weakness and we should be fine." "Great. No pressure." They moved deeper into the ship, passing walls etched with swirling patterns that seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim light. The place was silent except for the soft hum of life support. Avery could feel the tension growing in the pit of his stomach. It was one thing to study alien cultures from a safe distance, it was quite another to walk their halls uninvited. After several twists and turns, they reached what appeared to be a control room. It was circular with a central console that glowed faintly. Monitors flickered with Zerithian glyphs, unfamiliar symbols that Avery couldn't read but recognized from cultural studies. "I think this is where the distress signal originated," Avery said, stepping toward the console. Before Carver could respond, a low, commanding voice echoed from the shadows. "Don't touch that." Both men turned sharply, hands instinctively going to their sides. A figure stepped into the light, tall, muscular, and undeniably Zerithian. Her skin had a faint metallic sheen, and her piercing violet eyes locked onto them with a mix of suspicion and defiance. She wore a uniform that looked battle-worn, and a long scar ran down one side of her face, accentuating her fierce presence. "I'm Dr. Avery Sloan," he said quickly, raising his hand slightly. "We received your distress signal. We're here to help." The Zerithian woman's gaze flicked to Carver, who gave her a quick, nervous nod. "Lieutenant Carver," he said. "I don't need your help," the Zerithian replied coldly. Avery took a cautious step forward. "Your ship's systems are failing. If we don't fix your life support soon, you won't have enough oxygen to make it anywhere. Let us help and we'll be out of your way as quickly as possible." For a long moment, the alien didn't respond. Her eyes searched Avery's face as if gauging his sincerity. Finally, she crossed her arms. "You may assist, but if you cause any damage, you will answer to me. Is that understood?" "Understood," Avery said, his voice steady. "Good." She gestured toward the console. "I am Commander Valzina Korin. What do you need?" "Commander," Avery acknowledged, stepping toward the console. "If you can give me access to your ship's diagnostics, I can determine what needs to be repaired first." Valzina typed something into the console with sharp, deliberate movements. Avery's device pinged as a stream of data flowed in. He frowned as he examined the readings. "It looks like your oxygen filters are clogged," he said. "We'll need to clean or replace them. Also, your power relays are damaged. That's why your systems are failing." "Your analysis is correct," Valzina said. "Our engineers were injured during a micrometeorite impact. I've been attempting to manage repairs myself. 2 people can fix this much faster than one," Avery offered. 3 people, Carver added, stepping up. Avery glanced at him. "I thought you said this was a terrible idea." "It still is," Carver said, "but if we're doing it, I'm not leaving you alone." Valzina raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "Follow me," she said. She led them through more winding corridors to an engineering bay. The air was heavy and slightly metallic, and the hum of the failing life support systems was more pronounced here. Valzina pointed to a large, cylindrical device. "The primary oxygen filters are inside. The access panel is stuck. I've been unable to open it." Carver took a closer look and nodded. "I've dealt with stuck panels before. Give me a second." While Carver worked on the panel, Avery checked the backup relays. Valzina stood nearby, watching them silently. After a moment, she spoke. "Why would humans risk their lives to help a Zerithian ship?" Avery looked up from his work. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because if we don't help each other out here, who will?" Valzina's expression softened slightly. She said nothing, but Avery could tell she was considering his words. "Got it," Carver announced. The access panel popped open, revealing the filter assembly. Nice work, Avery said. Let's clean these out and get them running again. The three of them got to work, removing and scrubbing the filters, repairing the damaged relays, and stabilizing the power flow. It was slow, meticulous labor, but the tension in the air began to ease as they focused on the task at hand. Valzina even began offering suggestions, her tone less guarded and more collaborative. After several hours, the life support system began to hum more steadily. The lights grew brighter and the air smelled fresher. Avery leaned back and wiped his forehead. That should do it. You should have enough oxygen and power now to reach a nearby station for full repairs. Valzina studied the revitalized system, then turned to Avery and Carver. You've done well, she said, her voice steady but with a note of gratitude. Avery smiled. Glad we could help. Carver gave a thumbs up. And nobody tried to eat us. I'm calling that a win. Valzina's lips quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. Perhaps you humans aren't as weak as I was taught to believe. Maybe we're stronger in ways you didn't expect, Avery replied. Valzina's gaze lingered on him for a moment longer before she turned away, her voice firm but not unkind. I will escort you back to your shuttle. And thank you. As they made their way back to the airlock, Avery couldn't help but feel that this encounter was the start of something more significant. They'd bridged a gap today, one small step toward understanding. And though he didn't know where this newfound connection would lead, he was certain it had changed something in both their worlds. Chapter 2, Bonds Forged in Silence. Avery leaned back in the chair aboard the Odyssey's galley, his coffee untouched. Carver sat across from him, idly spinning a spork in one hand. The silence between them wasn't awkward, just reflective, as if they both needed time to process the strange encounter on the Zorithian ship. You think she was serious about that strength stuff? Carver finally broke the quiet, his tone skeptical. I mean, she looked strong enough to flip me across the room, sure, but it's like they think muscles solve everything. She was serious, Avery replied, his voice quiet. For them, physical capability and dominance are intertwined with survival. If you can't protect yourself, you're seen as a liability. Carver huffed, tossing the spork onto his empty tray. And here we are, lending a hand, showing her there's more to strength than brute force. More to strength than just muscle, sure, Avery said, a slight smile playing on his lips. But I don't think it's that simple. Valzina's mindset isn't something that changes overnight. It's their culture, their way of life. Carver rested his chin in his hand, studying Avery. You seem pretty invested in this, Doc. What's the deal? Avery shrugged, but his thoughtful expression remained. When you get a chance to see the universe through someone else's eyes, it changes you. That's why I joined the fleet in the first place, to learn, to understand. She's different, but not as different as I think she wants us to believe. Before Carver could respond, the ship's comm panel beeped. A low, unfamiliar voice filtered through. Dr. Sloan, Lieutenant Carver, your presence is requested on the Zorithian ship. Carver raised an eyebrow. Looks like she wants more of our brand of strength. Avery stood, grabbed his communicator, and led the way. As they boarded the shuttle, Carver continued his commentary. So what do you think it is this time? Another busted filter? Maybe the lights are too dim for her warrior pride. Could be anything, Avery said, though he suspected it wasn't something as simple as a mechanical problem. When they arrived back on the Zorithian ship, Valzina greeted them at the airlock. Her expression was as serious as ever, but there was a slight shift in her tone, less guarded, almost neutral. We need assistance with the environmental stabilizers, she said. They are functional, but the readings suggest a developing fault. I wish to prevent a failure before it occurs. Smart move, Avery said, stepping inside. If we can catch it early, it'll save you a lot of trouble. Carver glanced around. So, where do we start? Valzina led them through the corridors to the stabilizer bay. As they worked, the atmosphere was noticeably different from their first encounter. Valzina no longer barked commands. Instead, she explained the ship's systems in calm, clipped tones. Avery listened carefully, occasionally asking questions to clarify the Zorithian technology. So what's the main cause of these faults? Avery asked as he adjusted a sensor array. Overload from repeated micro-adjustments to maintain optimal environmental conditions, Valzina replied. Our current power distribution methods are not ideal. Carver chuckled. Sounds like a fancy way of saying it's old and needs an upgrade. Valzina shot him a look that might have been annoyance or grudging amusement. That is an oversimplification, but not entirely inaccurate. As they continued working, The barriers between them began to ease. Valzina explained Zerithian engineering concepts, and Avery countered with human approaches. Occasionally, Carver added his own humorous observations. The three of them fell into a rhythm, communicating more naturally and efficiently with each passing hour. At one point, while calibrating a particularly stubborn component, Avery glanced over at Valzina. "So, what made you join the Protectorate fleet?" he asked. She hesitated, her hands stilling for a moment. "It was expected. My family has served for generations. To do otherwise would have been unacceptable." "And you never considered doing something else?" Avery prompted gently. Valzina frowned slightly. "No. I knew my duty. I embraced it." She paused, then added, "But I have wondered on occasion what other paths might exist." Carver snorted. "You and me both. I was supposed to take over the family hardware store. Then one day I woke up and thought, I don't want to spend my life selling drill bits. So I joined the fleet instead." Valzina regarded him with mild curiosity. "You abandoned a secure future for one of uncertainty. Why?" He shrugged. "Because I wanted to see what else was out there." Turns out that what else is a lot of weird alien ships and stubborn commanders. Valzina tilted her head, a hint of something like a smile on her face. "Perhaps not so different from my own experience." Avery watched the exchange, noting the way Valzina's posture had relaxed slightly. She was opening up, little by little. He decided to test the waters further. "Do you ever wonder what life would be like if your people valued something other than strength?" he asked carefully. Valzina's expression grew thoughtful. "Our strength has allowed us to endure where others have failed. Yet I cannot deny that there are aspects of other species that intrigue me. Your willingness to assist even without obligation is not something I have often encountered." "That's just how we are," Carver said, grinning. "Helping out where we can, making friends along the way." Valzina's gaze shifted to Avery. "Your actions have been unexpected. I did not anticipate finding common ground with humans." Avery smiled. "Maybe there's more common ground than you think." They returned to their work, the conversation light but meaningful. By the time the stabilizers were fully operational, the three of them had developed a rapport that hadn't existed before. Valzina seemed less guarded, more willing to ask questions and listen to their suggestions. As they packed up their tools, she spoke again. "You have performed well. I believe this collaboration has been beneficial." Carver gave her a mock salute. "Anytime, Commander. Just call us when something else breaks." Avery chuckled, but he met Valzina's gaze seriously. "It's been good working with you, Commander. I hope we'll have more chances to learn from each other." Valzina inclined her head. "Perhaps we will. Safe travels back to your ship." As Avery and Carver headed back to the shuttle, Carver glanced at his friend. "She's warming up to us, huh?" Avery nodded. "I think she's starting to see that strength isn't just about what you can lift or how many battles you've fought. Sometimes it's about what you can learn from others." Carver smirked. "If she starts telling jokes, I'm going to be really impressed." Avery laughed. "One step at a time." As the shuttle docked with the Odyssey and they returned to their quarters, Avery felt a subtle shift in his perspective. In just a short time, the gap between their species had seemed to narrow, not through conflict, but through conversation and shared effort. And though he didn't know what the future held, he was certain that building these bridges, one moment at a time, was worth every risk. Chapter 3, The Turning Point. Carver squinted at the console's readout. "This isn't right? Power's still fluctuating. Are we missing something?" Avery frowned, running a diagnostic for the third time. "The primary systems check out, but the secondary grid is pulling more current than it should. It might be a faulty bypass." Valzina loomed nearby, arms crossed as she watched the two men work. Her steady, unflinching gaze hadn't softened much since their first encounter. "If you cannot resolve the issue, inform me. I will handle it." "We're handling it," Avery replied, not looking up. "It just takes a bit of time to pinpoint the exact fault." "You humans spend too much time speculating," Valzina said. "Action accomplishes more." Carver chuckled, his fingers dancing over the controls. "Yeah, and action without forethought causes messes you'll be cleaning up for weeks. No offense. Your forethought is only useful if it yields results," she shot back. Avery stepped in before the back and forth escalated. "We'll get results, Commander. Give us a few more minutes." Valzina made a noncommittal noise and stepped away, her movements sharp and deliberate. She began inspecting a nearby conduit as though she needed to keep herself busy. Carver leaned toward Avery, his voice low. "I don't think she trusts us." Avery smirked. "Would you, if the roles were reversed?" Maybe not, Carver admitted. But I'd at least give the benefit of the doubt. Seems like she's got a pretty short fuse. She's used to being the one in control. Asking for help probably wasn't easy for her. Carver tilted his head toward the commander. Yeah, well, she's got a funny way of showing gratitude. I heard that, Valzina called over her shoulder, though she didn't turn around. Carver shot Avery a look. She's got ears like a hawk. They do have sharper hearing, Avery said absently, his focus still on the console. Carver, can you check the relays down the corridor? There might be a damaged coupling. On it, Carver said, grabbing a toolkit. He gave Valzina a mock salute as he passed. Don't miss me too much. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing, turning her attention back to the conduit. Once Carver was out of earshot, Avery addressed Valzina directly. You know, we're not your enemies. She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, more measured. I never said you were my enemies. But trust is not something given freely among my people. It must be earned. Avery nodded. Fair enough. But you called us here. That says something. It says I had no other choice, she replied bluntly. You did, Avery countered. You could have sent the signal to anyone. You chose us. I'd like to think that means something more than desperation. Valzina looked at him, her piercing violet eyes unreadable. Your optimism is curious. It's just logic, Avery said with a faint smile. You're not as cynical as you think you are. Perhaps, she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. Carver returned a few minutes later, his face set in concentration. Found it. You were right, it's a bad coupling. I've got it patched for now, but we'll need a permanent fix. Avery gave him a nod. Good work. Let's get the power rerouted. The two men worked together to stabilize the secondary grid, with Valzina keeping a close watch. Despite her earlier remarks, she began to offer suggestions and point out potential trouble spots. Her tone was still firm, but there was a noticeable shift. She was engaging with them as partners rather than merely tolerating their presence. Once the system stabilized, the hum of the ship's systems smoothed out. The lights grew steady and the faint vibration in the deck plates subsided. Looks like we're back on track, Carver said, wiping his hands on a rag. Nice teamwork, everyone. Valzina inclined her head slightly. You have proven capable. Avery took a step back, rolling his shoulders to loosen the tension from hours of work. That's a start. The commander regarded them for a moment, her expression thoughtful. You two work well together. I can see why you were sent to assist. Years of practice, Carver said with a grin. And maybe a little natural charm. Valzina didn't return the smile, but there was a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. Your charm is unique. Avery chuckled. I think that's her way of saying she likes you. I would not go that far, Valzina said, though her voice held no malice. But you are tolerable. Carver clapped a hand over his chest. Wow, that's almost a compliment. I'm touched. Avery turned to Valzina, his tone more serious. So what happens now? Will you be able to complete your mission? She straightened, her demeanor becoming more formal. With the system stable, we can resume our course. Your assistance has ensured our survival. For that, I owe you my thanks. You're welcome, Avery said simply. Valzina nodded, then hesitated as though weighing her next words carefully. I am not accustomed to depending on others. This experience has been enlightening. Avery and Carver exchanged a glance. It wasn't quite an admission of trust, but it was some. He smiled, I swear. Did you see that? Avery smiled. I saw it. I think we're starting to get through to her. Carver laughed. Maybe next time she'll crack a joke. Baby steps. Baby steps, Avery agreed. Back aboard the Odyssey, the two men settled into the crew lounge, each lost in thought. Carver finally broke the silence. You know, I think we're actually making a difference here. Avery nodded, staring out the viewport at the distant stars. Yeah, I think we are. Chapter 4, The Power of Kindness. Avery leaned against the railing overlooking the Zerithian ship's engineering bay. It was quieter than he'd expected. A steady hum from the machinery, the occasional faint hiss of pressurized lines, but not the bustling activity he associated with human repair teams. Valzina was working at the main console, her hands moving deftly over the controls. Beside her, Carver was tinkering with a diagnostic pad, looking surprisingly focused. You know, this isn't bad, Carver said without looking up. I mean, I'd rather be back on the Odyssey with a beer in my hand, but I've had worse gigs. Valzina's sharp eyes flicked up from the console. Is that meant to be a compliment? Carver glanced over and grinned. Sure, let's call it that. What about you, Commander? You enjoying our company yet? Enjoyment is irrelevant, she replied curtly. You are here because I require assistance. Whether I enjoy it or not has no bearing on the outcome. That's a no, then, Carver muttered to Avery with a smirk. Avery straightened up, walking over to the console. I think what he means is we're all working together pretty well. Wouldn't you agree? Valzina hesitated, her fingers pausing over the controls. Your methods are unconventional, but they appear effective. We'll take that, Avery said. So what's the next step? Valzina gestured to a section of the readout. There is a misalignment in the power conduits. It must be corrected manually. I will handle it. Why not let us do it? Avery offered. You've got more important things to focus on. I am capable of handling multiple tasks, she said. But there was a note of weariness in her voice that Avery didn't miss. You might be capable, he said gently. But even the best leaders delegate sometimes. We can handle this for you. Valzina's jaw tightened. She glanced at Carver, then back to Avery. Fine. I will guide you from here. Carver gave a mock salute. Yes, ma'am. Avery picked up a toolkit and motioned for Carver to follow. They headed toward the conduit access panels while Valzina remained at the console, watching their progress on her monitor. You think she'll ever just say thanks? Carver asked as they pried open the panel. She said it, Avery replied. In her own way. Right? Carver said with a chuckle. She's a real ray of sunshine. The two men worked in tandem, removing a damaged power coupling and replacing it with a spare. Carver held the new coupling in place while Avery tightened the bolts. Got it, Avery said. Try it now. Valzina's voice came through their communicators. Power flow is stabilizing. You may proceed to the next conduit. As they moved on to the next panel, Carver glanced at Avery. You really think she'll come around? Like, actually see us as more than just tools? I think she's already starting to, Avery said. It's just not in her nature to show it the way we do. Fair enough, Carver said, his tone more serious. I gotta admit, it's kind of impressive. She's tough as nails, but she's still here, working with us. I've served with officers who'd have thrown us out an airlock by now. That's progress, Avery said. She might not say it, but she values what we're doing. By the time they returned to the engineering bay, the ship's systems were running more smoothly. Valzina stepped back from the console and crossed her arms, surveying the room. The misalignment is corrected. The ship's systems are operating within acceptable parameters, she said. Glad to hear it, Avery replied. Valzina turned to face them, her expression neutral. You have done well. I will not forget your assistance. Carver gave her a lopsided grin. So, does this mean you trust us now? Valzina's gaze lingered on him for a moment. Trust is earned through repeated actions. Today, you have taken another step in that direction. I'll take that as a maybe, Carver said, elbowing Avery. Avery shook his head, but he smiled. Thank you, Commander. I'm glad we could help. Valzina inclined her head slightly. I will review the ship's systems again. You may return to your vessel. Sure thing, Carver said, starting toward the door. Avery followed, but at the threshold he paused and turned back to Valzina. Commander, he said, if you ever need assistance again, don't hesitate to call us. We'll be there. Valzina met his gaze, her expression inscrutable. I will consider it. Avery smiled and followed Carver back to the shuttle. As they settled into their seats, Carver leaned back and stretched. You know, she's not half as bad as she seems. Once you get past all the glaring and the I'm a scary alien warrior routine. I think she's still figuring us out, Avery said. But yeah, she's not so bad. Carver grinned. You think we'll see her again? Something tells me we will, Avery said. There's more to her story and her people's story than what we've seen so far. Carver chuckled. Let's hope next time we're not just fixing her plumbing. Avery laughed as the shuttle engines hummed to life. We'll see. Chapter 5, A New Kind of Alliance. Avery adjusted his jacket as the shuttle's hatch slid open. The air inside the Zorithian ship was heavy with the scent of metal and faint ozone, but at least this time it wasn't oppressive. Instead, it felt familiar. Carver stepped in behind him, stretching his arms with an exaggerated yawn. Back again. Didn't think I'd miss this place so much, Carver quipped. Avery gave him a small smile. I think they missed us. You think she missed us? Carver asked, his voice just low enough to be teasing. Before Avery could answer, Valzina appeared at the end of the corridor. She walked with her usual crisp stride, her expression composed as always. When she reached them, her violet eyes flicked between the two men. You're here sooner than I expected, she said. Efficiency is one of our better traits, Avery replied. What's the situation? Valzina gestured down the hall. We've encountered a disturbance in the energy distribution network. The repairs we performed last time held well, but we've begun pushing the system harder to compensate for other issues. I need your assistance ensuring the new configuration remains stable. Carver nodded. Lead the way, Commander. They followed her through the ship, passing familiar corridors now lit more steadily than during their previous visits. The ship still felt like a labyrinth of alien designs, but the growing ease in Valzina's manner made it less daunting. When they arrived at the engineering section, she paused and looked directly at Avery. You'll need to recalibrate the secondary conduit relays while I maintain the core alignment, she said. Lieutenant Carver, you'll assist him. Carver gave a mock salute. Yes, ma'am. Avery moved to the console, his fingers already running through the diagnostic settings. Okay, let's start with the coupling interface. Carver, can you? Got it, Carver said, already crouched near the relay access panel. Valzina stood beside Avery, monitoring the core's performance. Do not overload the primary grid, she warned. It will cause a cascade failure. Understood, Avery replied, adjusting the power output. Carver, hold that steady. No problem, Carver muttered, his voice muffled as he worked. A few minutes passed in relative silence, punctuated only by the hum of the machinery and the occasional clink of tools. Then Carver piped up, You know, I never thought I'd be a regular guest on a Zerithian ship. Avery glanced at him. You're not a guest, you're a contractor. Carver laughed. Well, I'm charging triple for alien gigs. You would not be the first to profit from assisting my people, Valzina said dryly. But I assume you are here for reasons beyond monetary gain. Carver straightened, wiping his hands on a cloth. Sure, I'm here to help. But if someone offers me a free meal, I won't say no. Avery chuckled. He's joking mostly. Humor is an unexpected trait, Valzina said, her tone lighter than usual. Carver raised an eyebrow. You just call me funny, Commander? I did not say that, Valzina replied. I merely noted the presence of humor. Close enough, Carver said, grinning. Avery shook his head, focusing back on the readout. Okay, the secondary relays are almost stable. Just one more adjustment. Valzina studied the screen over his shoulder. Your methods are unconventional, but they are effective. That's high praise coming from you, Avery said. She didn't respond immediately, her eyes on the monitor. Then, after a moment, she said, You have demonstrated a level of adaptability I did not expect. It is worth acknowledging. Carver let out a low whistle. I think that's the nicest thing she's ever said to us. Valzina glanced at him. Do not let it go to your head, Lieutenant. Avery hid a smile and made the final adjustment. Okay, the relays are stable. Everything's running within normal parameters now. Confirmed, Valzina said, studying the display. You've done well. Both of you. Carver looked genuinely pleased. Hey, we're not just pretty faces. I have never considered you to be either, Valzina said smoothly. Avery couldn't hold back his laugh, and even Carver joined in. Valzina didn't smile, but there was a faint glimmer of amusement in her expression. As they began packing up their tools, Avery turned to Valzina. You know, we've been working together for a while now. I think it's safe to say we make a pretty good team. Valzina met his gaze. We have been effective. I will admit that. Will you call us again if something else goes wrong? Avery asked. She hesitated, then nodded. If your skills are required, I will request your assistance. Carver raised an eyebrow. Wow. I think that's as close to you're welcome here any time as we're gonna get. Do not push your luck, Lieutenant, Valzina replied, but her tone lacked the sharpness it once had. As they made their way back to the shuttle, Carver gave Avery a sideways glance. So, what do you think's next for our buddy Valzina? Avery considered the question. She's changing little by little. I think she's starting to see that strength doesn't just mean standing alone. Carver nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, she's still got that whole tough commander thing going on, but she's different from when we first met her. Avery smiled. That's what happens when you start to understand each other. As the shuttle's hatch closed, Carver settled into his seat. Think we'll ever get her to crack a joke? Maybe, Avery said, leaning back. But if not, at least she's listening. That's a start. Carver laughed. I'll take it. The shuttle lifted off, leaving the Zerithian ship behind, but not the connection they had built. Avery watched the alien vessel shrink in the distance, feeling a sense of accomplishment that had nothing to do with the work they'd done. It was about the people they'd met, the trust they'd earned, and the bridge they'd begun to build one repair at a time.